How is it going, everyone? The PlayStation Store is running a plethora of sales right now. Games under $20 sale, big games and big deals sale, some great deals across the two sales. We're going to be looking at titles that are supremely on a budget, under the price of $5. So let's just get right into it, and I want to start things off with Shadow Warrior, which is 90% off for $2.99. A great deal on a super fast-paced action first-person title. I wouldn't expect anything completely gripping from a narrative standpoint, but if you're just looking for a fun, action-heavy title, Shadow Warrior is going to give you exactly that. A super fast-paced game, has a little bit of length to it, but, you know, a game that you can get in and get out fairly quickly, and it's a lot of fun. It is incredibly bloody, so keep that in mind if that's not your cup of tea. I wouldn't say the game would be worth its full $29.99 asking price, but at sub $5 at $2.99, I think this is a great price and would strongly recommend it. Yeah, if you're a fan of action games and one title that you could probably complete in a weekend, Shadow Warrior is a decent little pickup here. Next up, if you're a JRPG fan, been mentioning this since it really dropped back in 2017, but now that it's down 90% off to $4.99, Dot Hack GU Last Recode is such an easy recommendation. Now, bear in mind, this is a remastering collection of PlayStation 2 titles, so obviously it's not a ground-up remake. It's a remaster that definitely has some refinements, and you do have all three of the original games, and you have a fourth smaller episode in there. Value-wise, it's great. There is a little bit of jank to it. There's some stiff animations. There's a lot of retreading of environments and whatnot, but this game, from a narrative standpoint, character development standpoint, twists and turns, and even the action gameplay, I think is quite good. A little bit repetitive at times, but overall I would say it's really well done. Solid soundtrack as well, and if you're trying to go through all games, like all three titles, the fourth smaller episode, you're talking about a very, very lengthy experience, probably, you know, in the neighborhood of 100 hours, and that's probably a little bit more of a conservative number. Nevertheless, 90% off for $4.99 is a great pickup for this. If you're remotely into JRPGs, would strongly recommend that as a pickup. Next up, we have Little Nightmares, which is 75% off for $4.99. Now, bear in mind, Little Nightmares is available on PlayStation Plus Extra, but if you're not a fan of Plus Extra, if you're not a fan of subscription services and whatnot, Little Nightmares is a must-buy. It was a PlayStation Plus Essential title a while back as well, so you might have it in your library, but nevertheless, a very, very engrossing horror title that has some interesting platforming elements, some interesting puzzle design, and it's a game that's incredibly gripping, again, from a design and world standpoint. Little Nightmares 2 was released by Tarsier Studios and Bandai Namco as well. That game was great. I would say even better than Little Nightmares 1, and rumblings have it that a Little Nightmares 3 is in development, so great to see that this has become kind of a franchise that Bandai Namco is really backing, which, you know, I wasn't really expecting when Little Nightmares initially came out, but man, it's a great horror franchise, and I would say if you're remotely into horror games or even just immersive atmospheric titles, Little Nightmares is a really good one, so $4.99 for it. Not a bad buy there. Next up, Super Meat Boy, 90% off for $1.49. Super Meat Boy Forever is on sale as well, but Super Meat Boy, the original, is really the classic that everyone gravitates towards. It was a title that back in the day, man, people just gravitated towards it based on it just being such a difficult game and it being something so different than you would usually see on Xbox. I believe it initially saw an Xbox 360 arcade release and then it hit other platforms, but it was incredibly difficult, incredibly challenging, but also incredibly addictive. It's a game that, you know, made people damn near break their controllers, but at the same time, people just wanted to go back for another run. If you're a fan of precision platformers, more challenging titles, Super Meat Boy is one that I feel like anybody can really get into, and I feel like most of you guys have probably played it in some form at this stage of the game, but for $1.49, it's one of the more iconic downloadable titles of all time, to be perfectly honest, and a no-brainer there for that price. Next up, the Talos Principle Deluxe Edition, 85% off for $4.49. Now, I'm kind of happy that this is a game I've been able to get a lot of people on, just because it's one of those games that came out almost a decade ago at this point. I want to say it came out back in like 2014, and I'm not a big fan of puzzle titles. I'm not a big fan of puzzle elements in my big budget titles. So the idea of a fully fledged puzzle game, that's not something I usually get behind. There are obviously games like The Witness that I've enjoyed, but the Talos Principle I thought was an incredibly compelling game from a design standpoint. It had a very unique setting with this sci-fi atmosphere to it, and the puzzles weren't overwhelmingly difficult, but they were also incredibly satisfying to go through. And overall, like, the visual style, the art direction in this game, just really, really well done. If you're the kind of person that's like me and not super into puzzle games, I would still say give Talos Principle a shot, because it's a game that may end up surprising you quite a bit. I know it did for me, and the Deluxe Edition includes some bonus content, so for this price at $4.49, a really good pickup, all things considered. Next up, we have Tomb Raider, the Definitive Edition, 75% off for $4.99. I've been a broken record about the Tomb Raider title since the origin story kicked off. I think all three games are tremendous. I do think probably Tomb Raider 2013 is the weakest of the three games. The game is a bit smaller than ROTR and SOTR, but it's still pretty compelling from a narrative standpoint, and it's still got some great action gameplay, platforming elements, puzzles, all that good stuff. If you're a fan of like Uncharted, that's what the comparison is usually drawn to. I would say give all three games a look. However, Tomb Raider 2013, ROTR, and SOTR are all being added to PlayStation Plus Extra later this month, I believe on May 16th, so be on the lookout for those titles if you do have a Plus Extra subscription, but for $4.99, the game is a really solid pickup. Go check that out. Next up, Rayman Legends, 80% off for $3.99, also available on PlayStation Plus Extra. A tremendous platformer of an IP that Ubisoft, I feel like, can do so much more with. Rayman Legends is just a really well done platform with a fantastic art style and a sizable amount of content as well. I feel like the game doesn't get credit for all of the levels that it does have. And again, it's a super accessible game from, anybody can really get into it. Whether you're trying to get a younger sibling, a kid into video games, I think this is a pretty good starting option. It does have cooperative play, it has a lot of great levels as well, and again, the art direction in the game I think is tremendous. So $3.99 for it, great pickup, definitely a recommendation there. Next up, Prototype, 85% off for $4.49. Now, I remember 14 years ago, yes, right around this time actually, 14 years ago, Prototype and Infamous were going head-to-head in the open world superhero games battle, and it was a wild time to be alive because it was like two similar style games coming out around the same time. People were hyped for Prototype, people were hyped for Infamous. I think ultimately most would agree that Infamous 1 was the stronger title, but no slight on Prototype because while it did have visuals that were very representative of a good-looking PS2 game, like, let's be real, this game from a visual standpoint, not a blow-away title. I still think the over-the-top superhero action-heavy gameplay is quite good. I wasn't super into the story, but overall, I enjoyed Prototype 1. I get it that if you were living around 2009 on the internet and you were a fan of like the fanboy wars, yeah, Prototype and Infamous, you remember those days. And I get pretty nostalgic when I remember about Prototype and Infamous, and I remember playing both of them, and I enjoyed Prototype. I thought Prototype was a pretty solid game. It is over-the-top from an action gameplay standpoint, but super fast-paced, like going up buildings and whatnot. I think it's a lot of fun. Again, didn't get incredibly compelled by the narrative, but I would still say it's a solid pickup at this price point. Next up, speaking of games with not a great narrative or a compelling narrative, I thought Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, one of the most compelling narratives that you're gonna find. It is a shorter title, but it's a game that's incredibly engrossing from a story standpoint, incredibly emotional as well, that I feel like anybody can really get into. It's a single-player title where you play as two brothers on this journey. A lot of tear-jerking moments and whatnot, but it's a game that if you're into immersive story-driven titles, Brothers is a good one. Not like you're gonna get a lot of action-heavy gameplay on this one like a Prototype, but it's still a worthwhile game to go through. Next up, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the Game Complete Edition. 67% off for $4.94. I'm not a Scott Pilgrim guy by any stretch of the imagination, but this was a really enjoyable beat-em-up. I first played it back on the PlayStation 3 when it came out there, and then ultimately it was ported to PlayStation 4 and other platforms, but you know, this is a good title. If you want a quality beat-em-up, you're gonna be able to get that here, especially if you have a couple friends to play with. It's an enjoyable title and a charming beat-em-up, and if you are a Scott Pilgrim fan, you're probably going to enjoy it more, and I like the cartoony look of the game as well, so check that out. For this price, I think it's a good pickup. And lastly, Saints Row 4 Re-Elected, available on Plus Extra, but 80% off at $3.99. Look, these Saints Row games are just mindless fun. Saints Row the 3rd, Saints Row 4, even Saints Row 2022, and I'm probably, you know, that game is pretty bad, but, like, I think it still could be mindless fun. Like, it's not a game you get super compelled by the narrative, but if you want over-the-top comedic gameplay, Saints Row is going to give you exactly that, and that's no different with Saints Row 4 Re-Elected. I think it's a pretty good buy. A sizable amount of content, but it's not going to be a game where you're going to be like, oh man, let me go 100% Saints Row 4. Like, I don't think most people are like that. I just feel like if you want a no-nonsense game, like Saints Row is going to give you exactly that. Not an immersive title, but if you had a long day at work, you want to get home and you just want to, like, you know, have fun in an open world, Saints Row is going to give you exactly that. And for $4, I think it's a nice getaway if you are, let's say, playing a game that's incredibly gripping and incredibly narrative-driven and you just want some mindless fun. Saints Row is always going to offer you that. But that is going to do it for me. Again, a lot of great deals under the price of $5. As always, links to all of these in the description box below. That's going to do it for me. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.